Hello, I am Lindsay Turley, Capital Projects Program Officer, and welcome to the NYSCA FY 2025 Capital Projects Opportunity Budget Webinar. We are going to go through completing the itemized budget form together, both for non-matching grants, matching grants, and the design opportunity. Before we go to the budget form together, just want to mention that if you are familiar with this opportunity from prior years, you may know that there was previously a short form budget and a long form budget. We are just using one form this year. So all grant opportunities, one form, we'll go through it 3 different ways. So now we will switch over to the budget form. This form has 3 tabs. The first is going to be your instructions. Please read your instructions all the way through before beginning on completing the budget form. Tab 2 is the itemized budget itself. We will return to this momentarily and go through it together. The third tab is your budget summary. You do not need to worry about the budget summary at the time of application. This is something that we will return to at contract and reporting if you should be awarded a grant. Going back to the capital budget form, the first thing you're going to want to do is complete this header information at top. Actually, before we jump to the header information, you're not going to need to worry about columns G through O when you complete this for the application. Those will come along later at contracting and then again at reporting. And so since we don't need to worry about those right now, I'm going to zoom in on the rest of the form so we can see it better and not worry about the fact it pushes those far right columns off. Okay. So back to applicant, grantee, contractor, SFS payee name. You're going to want to put the name of you, the applicant's organization. This should be the same name that's on your 990 and in the SFS payment system. If you also operate under a DBA, it's completely fine to include that name as well. Just make sure that we have your official name of record on this budget. So the name of my hypothetical organization is going to be Art Museum for All. You do not need to worry about your payment number or your payment request date at this point. The contract period for large cap and small to mid cap grants is 3 years. Design grants are shorter, but all grants have the same start date of July 1st, 2025. This is your friendly reminder when completing your budget that no NYSCA funds can be applied to expenses incurred, not just paid, but incurred before July 1st, 2025. It is absolutely okay to include your matching expenses that happened before July 1st, 2025, but NYSCA funds can only reimburse project expenses that happen after the July 1st, 2025 start date. You're next going to want to provide a name for your project. This should be the same name you use throughout the application. You want it to be descriptive, yet still succinct. I am going to be applying for a gallery audio-visual system. I am first going to go through this from the perspective of completing it for a no-match grant. No-match grants are only open to organizations that have operating budgets of $2 million or less. And these grant funds can go to projects where you're requesting either $10,000 to $25,000 or $50,000 to $99,000. We do understand that that donut hole there in the middle between $25,000 and $50,000 is confusing to some. It's related to the source of these grant funds. We are just happy we were able to extend the no match opportunity all the way up to $99,000. So that is good news. For this grant, we are gonna have to do a little bit of electrical work to install our new gallery audio visual system. So I'm gonna put 20,000 in for electrical. Then down here, I'm gonna indicate what my system is. Gallery audio visual system. The total cost for that is $60,000. We are completing column E right now, and this is your total project budget. So this is the total amount for each of these line items. It doesn't come into play quite as often for a no-match grant, but when we get to the matching grants, we will show the big difference between application total and NYSCA grant budget. So we're going to ask NYSCA for the total amount for each of these. So $20,000 for the electrical and $60,000 for the capital system itself. Because this is a relatively straightforward installation project for the AV system, we did not need to utilize the professional services of an architect and engineer, so we don't have any soft costs associated with this. Once we have established the line items and the relevant amounts, we are going to look to the funding source. Because this is a no-match grant and we're asking NYSCA for the full thing, funding source is NYSCA. It's going to be in progress because you are asking NYSCA for it right now. Same thing for the system itself. All right. So just because you're asking for a no-match grant does not mean that you can't utilize other funds. So let's say you have an individual donor who had already given you $10,000 for this project. You would just indicate there was also an individual here, and instead of asking NYSCA for the full 60,000, you would ask NYSCA for 50,000, which means the difference here between the application total project budget of 60,000 and the NYSCA ask is $10,000, which is coming from your individual donor, and you already have that money in hand, so you are going to say it is secured. And that is how you complete a no-match grant. We are next going to move to a matching grant request. For capital construction, this will be in the small to mid category. This is, and just to clarify, capital construction can include capital eligible systems too. We are not distinguishing between the two from the purposes of describing the application. For this particular project, we are going to increase the scope. Let's say that our gallery audiovisual system was of a nature where we needed to run in all new electrical and all new low voltage wiring. So we're going to have to open up our walls to do this. So we're going to do demolition, and then we are going to do carpentry, drywall, ceilings. Again, these are hypothetical projects. So if you are considering something like this, don't think that you have to have demolition or drywall work done in order to install a new gallery AV system. This is, again, an exercise for the purpose of completing this application. So we're going to say our total project cost for demolition is $20,000. We are going to allocate or budget $80,000 for carpentry, drywall, and ceilings. Because of the expanded scope, we're going to increase the electrical to $40,000. And then our system is now an $80,000 system. We also needed to draw on the expertise of an architect and an engineer. We'll say those are budgeted at 15,000 each. And now let's complete our NYSCA support. So just because NYSCA can support no more than 50% of the total project cost. And again, that's not just NYSCA funds, but all state funds, including NYSCA, cannot make up more than 50% of the total project cost. This does not mean that NYSCA has to support 50% of every single line item. So let's say you have an individual donor who has been really excited about supporting demolition in the past. We're going to say you anticipate support from them in the amount of $20,000. Therefore, you do not have to ask NYSCA for any of it. Meanwhile, we're going to allocate $20,000 of NYSCA funds to the $80,000 project line for carpentry, drywall, and ceilings. In this case, we have both NYSCA funds, and let's say we have a foundation. The NYSCA funds would be in progress because you are asking for them right now. And then let's say the foundation funds are secured. You already have them in hand. We go on down here to electrical. NYSCA is going to support $35,000 out of the total $50,000 or $40,000 project line. You can say our other source is municipal funds. Again, you can have other local, municipal, county, federal funding in the mix. You just can't have more than 50% come from the state. We are going to say those municipal funds are also secured. We are going to ask NYSCA for $60,000 of the AV system. We'll leave the funding source as is. NYSCA is in progress. The individual is secured. And then we're going to come down here to the architect. We're going to ask NYSCA for $10,000 out of the $15,000. And we're going to say that's NYSCA funds that are in progress. And then we'll say we've got an individual donor for the other 5. And then we've got an individual donor for the engineer. So the NYSCA funds would be in progress. We're going to say our individual is secured. And the individual is secured. Scroll on down. We have a $250,000 project, of which the request to NYSCA is $125,000. Other caps to keep in mind when you are completing your budget. If you do request any contingency funds, it can be up to 10% of the total grant amount. So in this case, it would be $12,500. That combined with your soft costs cannot exceed 15% of the total grant. Because we are not asking for any contingency here, the total amount of soft costs can be up to 15% of the total grant. At $10,000, we are well below that. That's more about 12.5%. So is room to add some on there, but just a reminder again, the max amount of soft costs is 15% of the total grant request. The maximum amount of contingency is 10% of the total grant request, but the two, when combined together, can still not exceed 15% of your total grant. When you are completing the funding source column, what we're looking for is the type of fund, individual, foundation, NYSCA, municipal. If you have other state, obviously you would put in other state, and that would lower the amount that you can ask from NYSCA. We do not need to know the specific names of which foundation, which individual. That is what your fundraising, financing plan, and cash management plan are there for. That is where you can talk about the specific details of funding requests in progress, funding requests you expect to make, funding that you already have in hand, and talk about who all of the specific donors are. That is a document that you would create and upload as an application attachment. There is a specific question that outlines what is needed in that document and where you should upload it. Additionally, if you want to include any notes about the budget itself, you have the opportunity to create budget notes. Those budget notes can apply to both your capital budget form as well as to your operating expenses. So anything that we need to know about your financial documents, you have an opportunity to explain narratively in the budget notes. That is also a document you would upload in the application. So now we are going to move on to, well, before we move on to the design category, one last note. So for many projects, you are going to hire, especially in the larger projects, you as the applicant might hire a general contractor or a construction management firm, and they are going to break out within their contract or their estimate all of the different types of work. In addition to what you see here, the masonry, the landscaping, mechanical and HVAC, electrical, plumbing, vertical transportation. You know, they may also have site prep. They may have windows, doors, and openings. They may have roofing, all sorts of things. So if you are asking NYSCA to fund any of those specific line items, you are going to want to list it here. So if you need to add more lines, what you do is you copy, and then you're going to insert it. While it doesn't matter so much for the application, any of these gray shaded columns do have formulas in them. And when you get to contracting and reporting, you will want those formulas to be in place. So rather than just inserting a line and filling it in yourself, we strongly encourage to copy and insert. And then you would just change the name here to whatever you needed to change it to. Couple of other notes. We often get questions about HVAC systems and elevators and whether those should be included with equipment. They are both considered construction expenses because a certain element of construction is needed to, well, and in some cases, a lot of construction, like within an elevator, is needed to install the equipment. So those would be listed here on the relevant construction line item if you are including an HVAC system or vertical transportation in your budget request. All right, so now going down to design. If you are asking for funding in the design category, you do not need to include any of your overall project construction expenses in the itemized capital budget that you submit with your design application. This budget should be specifically about the project to complete the design phase of work. So in this case, let's say we have budgeted for $150,000 for our architect and $50,000 for the engineer. When you are applying in the design category, there is not a cap on soft costs. And in fact, your entire request should be in your soft costs in the form of your consultants. So in this case, we have a request for, or a total project of $200,000. All of it is architecture and engineering fees. We are going to ask NYSCA, we're just going to keep it simple and ask for 50% on each line. So we've got 75,000 from the architect, 25,000 from the engineer. It's a $100,000 request out of a $200,000 project. Because we are also asking NYSCA for this. And again, we do also have no match grants in the design category. We have just completed it here for the sake of illustration. This is a matching grant for design. And that is how you complete your capital project budget. So one last thing to return to. The first, of course, is the deadline for this opportunity is January 14th, 2025 at 4 p.m. There are no exceptions whatsoever. The only exception, which is noted in the guidelines for turning something in late, is if you are in the process of executing your site control document. So say you are nearing completion of a lease, nearing completion of purchase of the property that you are proposing for capital improvement. There is some flexibility there. Reach out to capital project staff at capitalprojects@arts.ny.gov so that we are aware of the situation and we can give you the okay to go ahead. Otherwise, the application must be submitted in full by January 14th, 2025 at 4 p.m. And even those who are turning in site control late, you still need to get the rest of the application in by the deadline. We will continue to hold office hours every week virtually. There's a link here for how to register for them. If you also go to the NYSCA website, it is very obvious on our homepage how to navigate to the right place. We may start to offer office hours more than once a week as we get closer to the deadline. Any questions can still be directed to capitalprojects@arts.ny.gov. We suggest that you get your questions in by January 8th in order to allow us enough time to respond in a way that can be meaningful for you, for your project. Any technical questions involving submitting your application or uploading attachments can be sent to help@arts.ny.gov, or really any other questions you have about the Smart Simple system, logins, accessing an organizational account, etc. And then the number one thing that you need to get on top of, if you are not already, is that all applicants must pre-qualify in the statewide financial system by the application deadline. If you have questions about what is needed for pre-qualification, you can contact prequal@arts.ny.gov. This is a separate portal, the statewide financial system, from Smart Simple, where you submit your application. If SFS is not working for you, you can reach out to SFS help team as well. Their information is listed throughout the guidelines as well as on the NYSCA website. Please also note that neither the pre-qualification personnel at NYSCA nor the statewide financial system are likely to be able to resolve any pre-qualification issues received less than 7 days in advance of the application deadline. So please get on this immediately. Please identify anything that is expiring, any documents that are missing. We hate to see people have a complete application but have not completed their pre-qualification process. Any questions? You know how to find us. Good luck with your application, and we will see you soon.